Hello, my Aloha tribe, and welcome to the Aloha Perspective, where you get a little bit of something and a whole lot of everything. Happy Tuesday. Okay, I come by that honestly because I was not on yesterday. I was out fishing. That was so much fun. Like legit. I caught a and huh. I know. That's probably about a foot and a half. But anyway, so every so often on this show, I like to remind people about I'm about and what it's about. Well, not necessarily, not necessarily. Oh, I didn't realize my rings were magnetic. How about that? Anyways, I just kind of like to remind people what I'm about and what it's about. So let's go. I was gonna wait for some people to come on, but I'm not sure anyone's gonna be on because I kind of forgot to say. Well, no, I said it on Thursday when I would be back. But anyways, so here we go. Again, just and then I have a thought about something else that happened down here in San Diego. So just again, I was down here fishing. A friend of ours, of older siblings and mine, came in from Tennessee, took us fishing. She spoiled us this weekend, and I'm never eating again. So, which might be a good thing, but damn. Anyway, so I was thinking over the weekend, and sorry, I'm also very dehydrated. I was thinking over the weekend, and yesterday morning I couldn't sleep the other night before we went fishing, so I got about 3 hours of sleep, and I couldn't get back to bed. So I decided to sit down and write something. Good morning, Muddy. And I decided to sit down and write something about what this show is, or I don't know. It just kind of poured out of my mind, so I'm gonna read it. I did rewrite it once and make it a little more, I don't know, just a little more flowy. Maybe it isn't even flowy. I don't know. But I'm just going to read this. And then again, there's something else on a different topic that I do want to talk about, but kind of pertains to this in a small way. Okay. So the Aloha's if I can read. And by the way, I wrote this down kind of like the same reason I write the Oracle guidelines down so I don't just end up all over the place. So the Aloha perspective is just that. My perspective, my opinion. It isn't meant or intended to represent a whole, but my own thoughts. I assure you it is never my intention to be hurtful or disrespectful to anyone. I assure you that is not my goal. My hope has always been that by sharing my perspective, it will either help inform, entertain, or give people a chance to think about what I've shared, and in some cases, maybe even think outside of one's own comfort bubble. I'm not perfect. I do my best to do my homework. I call it homework because it's technically just fact searching, researching, okay? Whether I'm talking about something on here or sharing something to my stories on Instagram or Facebook, or even across social media. And even in the body of my own Facebook and social media. So just as a side note on that, um, because I know people across the political spectrum, I really try not to put things in the body of my Facebook. That's why I usually share them to my stories and in my Instagram stories. On occasion, I do, because you know how very passionate I am about this country and how very passionate I am about the direction it's been going. Okay, so let's see. When I get it wrong, because I haven't fact checked it, when you get really angry and you just share something, when I get it wrong because I haven't fact checked it on the rare occasion, when I haven't fact checked it on the rare occasion, I take accountability for it. My intention is never to offend anyone, which is why I call it a perspective. Yes, I do get on my soapbox from time to time and get passionate about things that are important to me. And if you disagree, that's okay. But I will not on my show quote or repeat anything I haven't searched or done my best to fact check against multiple sources. Multiple sources, okay? So a lot of people say, oh, but blah, blah, blah. And, you just look at this. Well, most of the people saying that are the people that watch one thing and then repeat it like it's fact. I admit, though, sometimes my soapbox sessions are me venting and sharing my pure frustration about so many things that many actually agree with me on. Again, I am not perfect, and yes, I do open up my own experiences more than many, including those I know personally. but I share deeply personal things because I am hoping my story will help someone heal their own. Um, oh, when I said I don't open up about other people's things, I'm just saying that I do know a lot of people and who have been through a lot of things who don't open up. So that's why I'm saying about the personally part. So, anyways, okay, because I'm hoping my story will help others heal their own. Others laid bare their souls and their stories, and many of those stories gave me the courage to face my own story and life happenings. So, oh, sorry, my writing. I'm telling you, this is what happens when I write fast, and I was so tired last night. Um, so I'm sorry. Let me try that again. I am still so exhausted, you guys. It was a long week. It was a long week, but it was a lot of fun and work. The tiredness today. Probably should have taken today off and come back tomorrow, but that's okay. So, anyways, others laid bare their souls and their stories, and many of these stories gave me the courage to face my own story and life happenings, and it allowed me to brave the storm and heal myself. In many shows, I share these experiences because if it touches even one person, and even helps one person, then it would have all been worth it. I am so sorry. I do my best to be sensitive about super heavy subjects and to present both sides in most subjects. But again, this is my perspective, so I speak to my experiences, not others, as I cannot speak for them and I won't. I can only speculate, and sometimes I will ask those questions. I take the responsibility of the Aloha Perspective seriously, whether it's guidance or something political, a funny subject, or something as mundane as pockets. Yes, we did have a show on pockets. Which are not which are really not mundane at all. Okay, pockets are important. I'm wearing a dress right now with no pockets. um I do my best to have integrity on the show as well as come from a good place. If anyone disagrees, I ask why, not to challenge anyone, but as I mentioned earlier, to get us all to think. I wear my heart on my sleeve as well as my thoughts, so you will be able to see where I am coming from in life and on this perspective. Thank you. I don't know why I put thank you at the end, but thank you. So yeah, there's a lot of things that I cover on this show. I did mention political, which is very, very rare. That generally happens if I'm on my soapbox. And it's because there's just, you always hear people making these comments about derogatory, hateful comments, but these are people who will not look back and see where most of this is coming from. If you are someone who's watching this and you have agreed with me across the board on many things, okay, whoever you are, because, this isn't just on Facebook, this is all over social media. I implore you to check out the president's own Truth Social page. The man cheered on Robert Mueller's death and then tried to make it sound like it was because he was bothering people. The other day, during a press conference, somebody asked him, don't you care about people's financial situations? I'm not concerned about that. I'm more concerned about, I'm paraphrasing right now, but he basically said he's not concerned with America's financial situation, like the average American's financial situation. He's more concerned about him, I'm more concerned about Iran having a nuclear bomb. Iran hasn't had a nuclear bomb. If they had one, they're not going to use it because everybody knows. Everybody threatens each other, right? It's like two guys who get drunk who are standing in a parking lot and just stand there like this, right? Waiting for the other one to throw a punch. But they don't want to because they know somebody's going to, throw it back. The reason they don't say girls is because girls, they don't think, right? They just right at each other, pulling hair, yelling at each other, slapping each other, punching each other. Yeah, I don't know what it is about girls sometimes, but boy, it's almost like all this rage is just, all this pent up generational rage is just ready to go. So, but that's beside the point. The whole point of being the leader of this country is to make sure that your people are okay, not for your own financial gain, which his entire family did. The man went to China and brought nothing but CEOs. I think he brought one cabinet member with him, the Secretary of State. And you know him. This is a guy who opposed the man for years and years and years. And then, just like the vice president did, then all of a sudden they're offered a position, and it's like, okay. The only reason they were offered a position was so they couldn't speak out against him anymore. Because gaslighting doesn't work that way. Am I being condescending right now? Probably, because I'm angry. I'm still angry. And there are circumstances as to why I'm a little upset right now. And I don't care, you know, because it's hard when people bury their heads in the sand. It's hard when people don't want to see the truth. Older sibling and I talk about this all the time. We've talked about it on this show. This isn't about politics anymore. This isn't about party. This is about saving this country. Yesterday, an older sibling and I were talking, and she's all, "Did you hear there was a shooting in San Diego?" And it's right out in Claremont, in what is called the Asian district. It's called the Asian district because it's Asian across the board. Okay, I mean the Vietnamese have a little Saigon, which is a little bit south of Claremont. I can't remember where it's in, but yeah, and it's literally called Little Saigon. But on this one long boulevard and on another one, but basically, I guess it's one square area. There's Japanese places, there's Korean places, there's Chinese places, there's Indian places, there's Islamic, well, Muslim places. So, and a lot of them are considered Asian. Well, Indians are considered Asian. Um, Obviously, Muslims are considered Middle Eastern, but still, I mean, a lot of them all end up in this general area, and so it's like a nice little community. And so yesterday she asked me, she's all, "Did you hear there was a shooting?" I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "No." And it turns out when she hands me the article, it's like 3 minutes old. So I don't think any of us heard it until at that moment. But yesterday there was a shooting at the Islamic Center. Now, this isn't an Islamic Center. I read the article. They work with other faiths, they work with the community, they try to help the homeless. They are just another religion. But we have been so conditioned to hate them over the last 20 some odd years, even longer, right? I mean, this goes back centuries, but in this period now, and I mean, a lot of the Middle Eastern is getting blown apart. So a lot of families that were already here are sponsoring their families to come over here. And so all of a sudden, everyone's panicking, like, "Oh my God, blah blah blah, they're gonna take over." No, it's stupid. They're not. They just want what everybody else wants. They want to live a life without a bomb dropping on their house. I mean, does Palestine even exist anymore? Because I'm pretty sure it's just rubble at this point, kind of like the Ukraine, right? Now Lebanon's being bombed. Iran had they had a college being bombed. I mean, you had revolutionaries there trying to take their government back. Because back in the 70s, Iran was becoming very westernized. And it's not that, we're sitting there going, "Become westernized." No, they were just moving into progress. Their women were being treated, respectfully. Everyone was just able to do this thing. I mean, I watched a video of these two girls who literally could be arrested for this. And you know what their rebellion was? Letting down their hair. And it was beautiful hair. And I think we talked about this before. But um apparently what had happened and I'm just taking this from the article I read right before this because I saw it on my news feed, and I was so upset because it's rhetoric. Rhetoric is what caused this. Hate speech is what caused this. Just the off the comment, off the what do they call, off the cuff comments that people make that they think nobody else is listening. This is what caused this. 3 people died. 3 men died. One of them was the security guard who they said probably kept it from being much, much worse. He was a father of 8. And now he's gone. But it's also possible that it could have been much worse. But the mother of one of the teenagers had said, "A couple of my guns are missing. A couple of the family guns are missing. And I saw my son leave with his friend. They were dressed in camouflage." And, she gave the police all the information she could. Now, I don't know what goes on in their home, and I'm not going to comment to that. But I will say this. It had to be very hard for the mother to do this because now she's lost a son. And while we focus over here on people that were lost, we also have to remember that these kids who get sometimes in their teens get their own ideas about things or start reading things or start hearing things, whatever it is, this person has lost their son. It's not about politics. If their politics kind of led him to this, I don't know what to tell you. But it's still, a mother said, "Uh-oh, my kid did this." And it has to be hard because she pointed this out. So anyways, I guess I don't know if they shot some people up and then these kids left, but they found them a few hours later and they had both, taken their own lives. But they also found, anti-Islamic propaganda in their car. The How do I put this? Um there are extreme states in every religion. We have Christian nationalists here. Yes, there are extreme Muslims. Yes, there are extreme everybody across the board. I think the only one that doesn't have an extremist is the Buddhists. Maybe even the Hindu people. Because they're all about Zen, right? They're all about peace. It's not about fighting over land. It's not about fighting in the Bible. It's just, find your center, you know? So, I mean, if they have any extremists, it's just somebody trying to tackle you and go, be positive. Seriously. I mean, and I'm sure there's other faiths that I'm missing, but it seems like since I've been little, like this is the new version of the Holy Wars, right? The Crusades. And I always used to say that. I say, wow, we're just living in the modern, when I was a kid, I would say this. I'm like, wow, we just seem to be living in the modern age of the Crusades, like the Third Crusade. And nobody seems to notice it because it's all TV and there's not really any fighting. There's just people taking each other out from time to time, you know, and it's sad. And I will never refer to a Christian nationalist as being an actual Christian. They're just people who take passages from the Bible and throw it at people, just like a Muslim extremist. There's nothing in the Quran, from what I understand, in the original text that calls for them to be violent. But I am sure, like the Bible, it's been written several times over to suit other people's needs. You know, so we have to stop. We have to stop. Because again, I can't speak to where these kids were coming from, but with all the stuff happening right now and all of this back and forth, because Iran even said, the Iranian prime minister even says, like, well, because what's his face wants to sit down and have a chat with him. He's like, we can't trust them. We can't trust them. And so what happens? The person who leads this country is blocking a strait that is holding everybody up. It's making our gas prices higher, which in turn make our grocery prices higher. Because groceries don't just appear in the grocery store. Groceries have to be driven there. They're making flights more expensive because the fuel is more expensive. And so this is why I read everything I read about in this perspective. I don't know what other people are coming from, where other people are coming from. I don't know what they're thinking. I know some people don't get through my show, because we've talked about this on the show before. It's like, I've probably lost the people that I'm trying to reach. I'm not there to change their minds. I'm here, just like it says in here. If you disagree with me, ask yourself why. Because that's what I do. When I disagree with someone, I sit there and say, well, why do I disagree with them? I mean, not if you're having a conversation with your friend, you're like, no, 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 no. Like, oh, I think, this band is the greatest band on earth. Yeah, I disagree. But when it comes to politics, I do ask myself, why am I so angry? And so I do my homework. Other people, but this is not how I used to be. This is what older sibling has taught me. Because I used to be very set in my own mind. I had the potential to be someone way over there on the far, far right. But sibling really kind of reeled me in. I mean, not on purpose. We would just talk and be like, yeah, maybe I am more of a centrist. But over the last 10 years, I have become more of a centrist. I might lean a little left now. Not a lot, but a little. But there's so many misconceptions that each side has about each other. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating. That's why I wanted to write this whole, just kind of, I guess, my mission statement, right? I'm not here to offend anyone. I'm not going to speak, and I didn't point anything out other than the fact that every so often, if you've noticed on the show, I do one of these to make people understand what the perspective is. It's not meant to hurt or offend anyone. It's meant to get us to think. And a lot of times, like if I do an oracle, a lot of times the minute I mention oracle, I can see the numbers drop on my thing. Because people think, oh my God, it's the devil. It's not the devil. I only work from a good place. And to think that is to think indirectly poorly about me. Because do you really think I would put your spirituality in danger? No, that's not who I am. So, and I apologize for the pineapple. This is how I figure out which one doesn't need to be charged. So, it took me a while because I was always grabbing the wrong one. But anyways, like I said, this isn't about anything specific. This isn't about anything, period. This is just, I couldn't sleep yesterday. I got up early. I wrote this down because I really needed people to understand that this perspective is just that. It's just my perspective. Yes, I get on the soapbox sometimes. But like I said, we gotta quit the rhetoric here. 3 men are dead. Now, it said that, there are 5 prayers daily at the Islamic Center. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't know much about Muslims and the Muslim, and the Islamic religion. Um, I do know they pray several times a day. And I'm not sure if it's following the sun around, and they always face east, right? Because that's where Mecca is. But this was just a community who had done nothing to anybody else, just living their own lives. It's like these crazy people that used to go into abortion clinics and shoot them up. It's like the receptionist, whether she agrees or not with what she's doing, she's earning a paycheck and now she's dead. Okay? So, what's the point? Why the violence? Because, like I said, they found Islamic, they found, basically hate speech and propaganda in these boys' cars. And now they're dead, took their own lives. And again, the security guard who stopped this from possibly becoming so much worse than it could have been was a father of 8, and now he's gone. The 2 other men haven't been identified yet. So I can't say that I know that they pray 5 times a day, but I know that there were at least 5 prayer gatherings daily at this center. And because sometimes I think a lot of times they'll go because it makes them feel safer. They have a security guard at the front just to pray. I mean, how would we like if somebody came in and shot up a Catholic church, or shot up a Baptist church, or shot up a Methodist church, or a Lutheran church, or I mean, I can't, we know this has happened at a synagogue. And this wasn't, I don't even think this was their mosque. This was just a community center for men to gather. Because why? Because if one of those men would have thrown out his prayer rug in the in the office kitchen or outside of the office building, everybody would be panicking. And all he's doing is worshiping. All he's doing is praying. He's probably, I know they have a way of how they pray, but maybe in his head, I'm praying for my family, I'm praying for my friends, I'm praying for the success of something else on top of their traditional prayers. And 3 of those men, and I'm not even sure who the man at the front was, but everybody loved the security guard, but everybody loved him. He was just doing his job. And bless his heart, he probably saved a lot more people that day. And but it's still 8 children and a wife, right? Who don't have a dad or a husband anymore because somebody else's, rhetoric and hate. Who, by the way, took their own lives. I'm I understand suicide. Forgive me for saying that. I do understand that. Taking your own life. And I understand that a lot of times it's just something that happens in the moment. But people will say, well, that's a coward's way out. That's this. When it comes to people who are truly struggling with depression, I agree. Now, I can't say that these kids weren't struggling with depression. The mom said he was suicidal. But when you kill people and then take your own self out, to me, that's being a coward. Because you're creating an action that could have been avoided for whatever reason. It's like, well, I'm going to do this anyways, and my friend's going to do this anyways. Oh, hey, let's go out and kill some people. No, that's hate speech. That's what happens when we say negative things and mean things around people who are impressionable. And we need to stop. We need to legit stop. There's one thing and people will sit there and say, well, and like I said, I'm not talking about the kid's mom anymore. I'm just talking in general. When people make these, they sit around in their living room with all their hate speech and this, that, and that. And, maybe the kid hears it. So they start going down the rabbit hole. The internet is the most fascinating but dangerous place. It's fascinatingly dangerous because there's so much misinformation on it. I mean, so many people have been gaslit over the last 10 years. And before that, I almost fell into it. But then it's like, funny enough, the person who's gaslighting everyone is the reason I became not gaslit. And for a while, I actually agreed with some of the things early on before the man was even president. It's just kind of like, and then all of a sudden it's all like, I don't know. I woke up and it's like, well, he got nominated to the party. And I'm like, oh no, this is a man who should not be president. Even his mother said he shouldn't be into politics because he'd be a disaster. His own mother. And now he's just grifting his way through his presidency, trying to gerrymander, different things. I remember I had a conversation with somebody down here in San Diego, and they're all like, they posted something like, and I said, well, I'm really sorry about this and blah, blah, blah. I probably shouldn't have commented because I don't like commenting on other people's pages, but there was just so much misinformation. It was killing me. And so we talked a little bit, and this is somebody else I know that posted a video from like 30 years ago that said, well, they said, and basically the left, right? But science said that, something would be extinct in about 20 years. Didn't happen. Something said that, this would be, the problem, and and it didn't happen. And I told older sibling, I said, I read this thing and all I could think of was, that's because of science, you dimwits. They were telling you what could happen if we didn't take responsibility. There used to be heavy environmental protections on certain things in this country, and this president relaxed them. But by the way, I just want you to know that before he did that, there was a global report letting us know that, hey, the ozone layer is healing itself because we've put these stipulations on this. We just hit the reset button. Now we got to start all over. These animals that haven't gone extinct, that's because people gave a shit. Somebody funded them to help save them, to help keep them from becoming endangered. It kills me. When I was little, I used to think, oh, the weed killer commercials. Now when I look at the weed killer commercial, I'm like, you're killing our planet. Just pull the fucking thing or leave it be, because it's like, that's what the bees eat. And we need the bees because they pollinate everything. It's just so frustrating. I know it started out with me talking about my perspective, but it is very frustrating. Because even the older sibling and I sometimes we'll sit there and just shake our head like, what the fuck? Seriously. Excuse my language, but it's exactly that. I don't even know if she's on because she's still a little bit in northern San Diego. She goes home today, but we had so much fun, and it was her birthday on Friday. But like I said, I wrote this down because I wanted people to understand that when I speak from the perspective, or if I post something on my page, which like I said, I rarely do, I will post things into my stories, but I fact check them first, because even the side I'm on gets it wrong. Nobody's perfect, but they'll just share it. And it's just like, you can't just share this shit if it's not accurate. But let me ask you a question. This is a man. Oh, good morning, older sibling. Yay, got Muddy and older sibling on. So let me ask you this question. Okay. This man literally said every president before him was wrong. Okay. We talked about the gerrymandering because he's afraid he's going to lose the election. And, Even Steve Bannon said, if, we lose this election, everybody in this room is going to end up in jail. Now, I think that was the 2020 election, and he did end up in jail. And, there's a lot of people who do believe it, and I'm one of them who kind of believes that this is just to continually hide the Epstein files. But I only partially believe that because I think this is more about him putting money in his pockets and the pockets of all of his donors, right? He talks about DEI, but there's really only one cabinet member that's always in the news. That to me is just like, oh, well, that's your token cultural person. It's your token, person of color. That dude in the FBI. I will say this again. DEI actually benefited more white Caucasian women than it did people of color. And why? Because they were considered minorities as well. Yes, ladies. Those of you who identify as white were considered minorities, even still. And the more this man's in office, the more and more we become like these states that try to stifle their women. The fact that people can't even handle having a woman president right now says everything we need to know about this country. We talked about this the other day in one of our conversations, just the three of us. And that a friend that we were visiting with, and we're like, and one person says, well, it's because she's a person of color, and I'm all, it has nothing to do with it, because we had an African American president. It's because she's a woman. It's not because she came in late to the game. It's because she's a woman. And so all the people that voted against her now are suddenly turning on the current president. And I would love to sit there and go, what did you think was going to happen? He showed his hand in his first term. And people don't see that because he had people that actually knew what they were doing in his cabinet. And he was still tripping himself up. He was still getting himself into trouble. And now he has people who are nothing but yes people, like, yes, sir, I'll do anything for you because I want power. It's a shit show in this country. Like, straight up. I don't care if you agree with me or not on that, but it is. If you do disagree with me, look around. Look at the stuff he says. He's spreading this hate. He's spreading this anger. I mean, he literally threatened the president, the other president, saying, well, I can't quote him exactly, okay, but he was making derogatory comments, which is all he does. Because that's how he continues to fuel the hate in his hardcore followers. I actually found a site the other day, which I thought was a joke, but it's not. It's called Leaving MAGA. And it's run by people who used to be so indoctrinated into that faction. I don't even consider them Republicans anymore. I mean, when I was home, I saw two people fighting, running for the same office. I saw two people fighting on who Trump loves more. And one saying, oh, well, they're a rhino. No, they're the rhino. And I'm like, you're both rhinos, because real Republicans are the ones like older sibling. The real conservative who wants her party back because she even sees what's going wrong. I mean, I know so many Republicans who are like that. They're like, no, we may, and she never went as far right as MAGA. From the minute he got into office, she's like, The only reason she didn't leave the party like I did was because she said, no, I want him to see that Republicans are voting against him. I just couldn't handle it anymore. Turns out I'm probably a little bit more liberal than I thought I was. I don't know. But I don't even identify as that. I was always center of the road. The only reason I registered as a Democrat was because I had to in order to vote in the primaries. And I just thought, oh, I'm not going to change it back. Why should I? You know what? It's like they want to come after me, come after me. Okay? Because I'm tired of people like me and people on the left being called anti-patriots, super woke. If you're using the term woke, you better sure as shit know what it means. Woke is about fighting against social injustice. It became a very prominent word amongst the African American community, not just in the civil rights movement, but before that. I mean, how is it that I was in my 40s when I finally learned about the 1920 massacre in Tulsa, the Tulsa massacre? Never taught that in our books. We should talk about that. Not on this show because I can go off on that one. But I will say this. How is it that, because that was like the Black Wall Street. That's what they called it, like the Black Wall Street. And they were thriving. They were prominent because all the white people said, "Nope, we're going to give you this strip of area, you do." Those white people got so mad they came in and burned everything down. Okay? They hit people, they shoved people, they shot people. It was a massacre. And they burned people's homes too. Why? Because they couldn't make a go of it. Because these people had offered them help and saying, "Hey, this is how we're doing it. No, we don't take advice from your kind. The right, your kind." And I'm sure that's not the word they use, but I'm not going to use that word. I've never used it in my life. I will never use it now. We have to do better. We have to be better. I see people on the far left saying, "Well, I'll never forgive them, the MAGA people, blah 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 blah." And it's like that's when you become the problem. Because they're saying, "Well, you are responsible for the way our country is right now." I'm not exactly happy with the way our country is right now. In fact, I'm downright furious, but I will tell you one thing. It shows us where we still need to fix things. Why are we still treating our African American citizens, our people of color citizens, like they're second rate citizens? Like they don't matter. They were born here, they're generational at this point, right? There are people in this country who are African American and Chinese and Japanese who have been Americans longer than my own ancestors. Not a lot, because my dad's maternal grandmother's side goes back pretty far. But my roots, if I go through my father's line, only really start in the probably the mid 1800s, maybe the early 1800s. So, I mean, still pretty long, right? Still pretty long. But if I go through his paternal side, my great grandfather didn't come here until the 1800s. My great grandmother in Hawaii and my great grandfather, they didn't come here until the 1900s. So, I mean, in the 20th century, my mom's line starts in the 20th century. My dad's line starts in the 19th century. We don't go back as far as a lot of these other people. I mean, there are African Americans who came here as slaves in the 1600s and earlier. And yet somehow everyone just feels like, oh, the Mexicans that lived on this land, right? I live in California. Generational. Been here forever. We have to stop acting like, territorial bitches. And we have to start being more human. And I know that's a lot to ask, but I heard the words, people need to be more kind to one another this weekend. And I will say, I will only refer to this one incident as this. It was being aimed in the direction of people like me. People need to be more kind. And it's like, no shit. No shit. It's like, I may post political stuff in my stories, but if you bother to look at all my stories, I post a lot of positive stuff too. I try to post a lot of positivity to my Facebook page, hoping it lands in the right place, but also because I love it. And that's all I'm going to say about that, because I'm still a little upset about a certain situation, but that's not what this was about. This is not what I wrote about. I didn't even refer to that in this. If we're going to be more kind, we need to start from the very, very top of this country and point out the one person who's causing a lot of the unkindness, a lot of the derogatory, hateful comments, a lot of the pain that's happening in this world. I don't know why these two kids that shot up this Islamic community center, I don't know where they got their rhetoric from, but I will go out on a limb and take a very wild guess. Sorry, guys. If I don't drink my water, I'm going to get a headache if I get any more dehydrated than I am. But I will say it started at the top. So, anyways, I did not intend for this to be a soapbox moment, but like I said, I read that article about the Islamic Center before this, and in fact, oh, it's on my phone. But like I said, they work. This is a community center that works with the homeless, works with the less fortunate, not in just their own community, across the board. They also work with other faiths, okay, in this particular realm of trying to help people. And yesterday, 3 people, the security guard, and I'm not sure if he was Muslim also. I'll be honest, I'm not sure. Um, but the other 2 men were, I believe. Just there, one doing his job, the other 2 just showing their faith. And now they're gone. Men with families, I'm assuming. I'm assuming the other 2 had families. They're just not identified yet. But men with families. And then we wonder why people retaliate. Most of the time people come to this country. I mean, yeah, I'm sure there are sleeper cells in this country. There always have been. There were Nazi sleeper cells in this country. Nobody ever talks about that, right? There may have been Japanese sleeper cells. I don't know. But my dad and I often talk about that. I'm all, how come they didn't put the Germans in camps? Why did they just put the Japanese people in camps? Because we knew they were there. And nobody wants to answer that. Nobody can answer that. I mean, was it easier to weed them out? My dad says probably because it was easy. That's what he says. Probably because it was easier to weed them out. And the white people wouldn't let the other ones go. No, so what do? We round up all the Asians, round up all the Japanese people. My friend's mom was in one of those camps. And I just, and they built a community there. They weren't going to be held back and they weren't going to be held down. But to this day, I will ask why. One man asked during the video that we watched, he was, oh, well, why are we here? And the military man said, for your own protection. And the man responded to him, then why are the guns pointing inwards? There were not very many of us in the theater watching that movie because it's a movie that just kind of rolls through, right? Like every however many minutes with like a break in between for about 5 minutes to let other people come in. But you could hear several like that, like everybody, it clicked in their heads like, oh my God, right? Why are the guns facing in? Why are you worried about them escaping if you're supposed to be protecting them? That's like putting someone in jail and saying, well, you're here for your own safety. And sometimes it might be because you never know, but it's like arresting or just some guy walking down the street, you put him in jail. I'm putting you in here for your own safety because you look different. Anyway, um so yeah, my perspective, I try to show both sides. I do. I always try to show both sides. I read that to you. I do get passionate sometimes, like about this. And this was not intentional. Like I said, I read that article right before I came on. I was just like angry. I was angry. I like to read things before I say anything about it because I mean, you have Christians that come in and shoot up their own churches because they're just angry and they're sad or whatever it is, and then they kill themselves. You have people that go into their own high schools, right? This happened in Colorado where they just shoot up everything and then they kill themselves. So I wanted to make sure that I had, the facts straight. And when you read that they found anti-Islamic rhetoric in their car, you know exactly why they went there that day. We need to be better. We do need to be kinder. That part I agree with. We all need to be kinder. But here's the thing. You can't stop people from having an opinion. Okay? You can't stop people from believing what they're going to believe. But you also can't stop people who care about other people and say, geez, how do we wake them up? How do we make them see that what they're following is a very dangerous path, a very dangerous road? I mean, just as a side note, and I promise I'll let this go. My mom always thought I was on the wrong track. We were talking about this last night. I said, yeah, I said she used to go into my room And I found this out from my dad later, and then he denied it. But I know my mother, and I called her on it. She said, "Well, who told you that?" And I'm like, I'm guessing because I know how you could be. I had depression when I was a teenager, but in this family, we didn't talk about it, right? Because my mom had a uncle who had taken his own life, and if you don't have depression, you just need to be stronger. That was something she actually said to me once. But before I was ever diagnosed, you sleep a lot, you're quiet. I'm an only child too, so I'm very self-entertaining, but there would be times when I would sleep a lot. And part of it is high school was hard back then. I don't know how kids do it now because it's so much harder now, but high school was hard back then. I mean, I had a lot of subjects, and my mom had me in college prep courses, so my brain needed a break sometimes. But she would think, "Oh, you're sleeping in the middle of the day." And I had cousins who had a problem with substance abuse for a while. So I found out when I wasn't around, like if I was at a friend's house or whatever, she would search my room for drugs. And and I appreciate her. I told her, she said, "Well, who said that?" And she got all offended. I said, "Look," I said, "I was mad when I first found out, but I appreciate the fact that you're proactive." But I'm all, "How well do you know me? Do you really think I do that?" My cousins got kicked out of their houses, got kicked out of both their parents' houses for doing this. It's like, I'm a paranoid person. I'm not going to do something that's going to get me onto the streets. I don't know how to survive by myself. I still don't know how to survive by myself. I don't. I'm honest. I'm really ridiculously pathetic that way. But I was just like, no, I told her, I said, "You know what?" I said, "I appreciate it now, but back then, if I had known, I would have been mad." Because it's like, you need to trust me more. Do I really look like I do that? I have smoked pot a few times, and I have done mushrooms a few times. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, this is back in my early 20s and my late teens, but never when I was in high school. I mean, I didn't even appreciate, like I would have a drink or two out of peer pressure before I turned 21. And I will tell you this now: if you are a kid who's thinking about it and want peer pressure, don't do it. And I'll give you the main reason why. Because then when you turn 21, it's not as fun anymore. It's just kind of like, okay, well, now it's legal. Now I can order a drink and not get in trouble, or and it's actually kind of fun getting carded when you're 21. But yeah, I'm just like, because people say, like, I've told my nephews, "Oh, well, Auntie, why?" And I'm all, because then when you turn 21, it's not fun anymore. It's not like this, oh, because you already know what it's like. And it's, yeah, it might be rebellious before we turn 21. And I was terrible when it came to peer pressure. I am, I'm really bad when it comes to peer pressure. At least I was then, not so much anymore. But anyways, I'm rambling now. So anyways, hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful day. Please, please, please take care of yourselves. Be kind. All right, be kind. This isn't a lecture about anybody or at anybody or to anybody. These are thoughts that roll through my head. And when it comes to my perspective, this is, I know it's not bigger. I wish it was. Even my doctor asked me, she's all, are you monetizing it? It's like, no, nobody ever watches my show. So, well, I do. I watch your show and I heart every single time I see it. She's all, even if I don't have time to watch the whole thing, I'll heart it. It's like, I love you. I appreciate you. I do. I love my doctor. But regardless of how many people it reaches or doesn't reach, like I said, this is my baby. This is something I'm proud of. This is something that, whether it reaches a height I would, or it doesn't, and just stays what it is now. This is my baby. This is my place where I either get on my soapbox, which is very rare. Okay. I know that I was on my soapbox last week, and I know I was kind of on it at the end of this show. But this is something that means a lot to me. That's something that's very important to me. I feel like I said in this, that by opening myself up and my experiences, which is how it really didn't even start that way. My cousin just said, "Look, you got a lot to say, and I think you should do a show on it." And I didn't know what to do at first, so I had a bunch of cards that I used to pull every morning, and we talked about it. We related experiences, and in its own way, I think one of the reasons this feels like my baby is because it helped me heal along with my own healing journey. It's not easy to open myself up and talk about the things that have happened in my life, to share the things that have happened in my life, to share the things that I've done or some of the choices I've made that I'm not sure I would ever make again. Because I do realize that out there is somebody who's struggling just as much. Maybe not a girl, not a female. It could be anybody who identifies across the board, however they identify. Someone that had childhood trauma, someone that had, this, that, or the other. And it may not even be the same kind of childhood trauma I had. It could be something completely different, but it makes someone think like, wow, maybe this is what's causing this. I really need to look into this and maybe I can heal from it. I was talking last night how my parents are the only reason I did not become a statistic because of what happened to me, because I seen a lot of people go down a different road from what had happened to them who still struggle. I'm very blessed to have the support system I have. It's like all these little pieces just ended up in the right place and saved my life in a lot of different directions. And because of that, I feel like I just want to give back. It's not, a Mother Teresa moment. It's nothing more than just, like I said here in the thing, other people bared their souls and their stories, and it gave me the courage to start healing my own. And I think there's a quote on that, right? We share our stories to help other people heal theirs. It's as simple as that. When you feel seen and you feel like you're not alone, it can click something in your head that says, I need to heal. And it's not easy. Healing is hard. It's hard. It will tear your soul out so that you are facing it. But it will also be the best thing you will ever do in your life. I went through a lot when I was on my healing journey, but I wouldn't change a thing because I realized I had to walk through that storm that just felt like broken glass flying at you in order to get to the other side. And sometimes I'm still picking out those pieces of glass, right? But if if I can't say I would do it again because I'm through it, but if it were another life, I would do it again. Hopefully I wouldn't need to, but like I said, it's hard to say. If I had it all over, if I had to do it all over again, I would. And I would. If I had to do it all over again, I would, because it was worth it. And I found out a lot about myself too. So anyways, let's try this again. I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful day. Please, please, please take care of yourselves. Yeah, just be kind, see yourself. If you're having a bad day, I learned this from our dear friend Susan, one of the besties. Just look at yourself in the mirror and smile for about 15 seconds. Let that help improve your mood. Okay? So, yeah. And if you're in there doing that, just tell yourself you love you. Just say, I love you. Sometimes we're not going to hear it from the places we hope to hear it, but we can always hear it from ourselves. All right? You are your biggest champion, and you are in charge of everything you think and do. So make it good stuff. All right? So again, have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you back here tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Pacific time, Facebook Live. All lives are public under Shell and Ray Lucas. Anybody can watch. Whatever you do, prayers, vibes, all those things, please send them to that community center, the Islamic Community Center in San Diego, because I think they could use a lot of good feeling love and support right now. All right. Have a great day.